Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Rapid Recap on the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel. He's Greg Smith, I'm Zack Carpenter, and we're coming to you after the 13th practice of Nebraska Fall Camp, where Marcus Satterfield, Garret McGuire both met with the media, in addition to Isaiah Garcia-Castaneda, Ty Hahn, and Alex Bullock, and then an appearance by Jeff Sims.
Surprise!
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, all right, I feel like we're going to get 3 or 4 receivers today, and then Sims was brought out. Since we're on the subject, we can just talk about Jeff Sims right away. I mean, the biggest takeaway I got was him, again, talking about his connection off the field, but especially on the field with Billy Kemp, who those two just seem, ever since really they arrived here, quarterback wide receiver chemistry just feels like it keeps leveling up.
Yeah, it definitely does. And Billy is a guy. Also, Alex Bullock talked about how he learned that he basically asked, when did you know he was a dude? And he said when he first got here in the winter. You see him walking around in the weight room, how he lifts, how he kind of goes about his business, and we knew that. And Sims has been kind of a similar way, right? Like people kind of gravitated to him right away. So it's no surprise that those two have built a really strong bond and a chemistry. We've kind of talked about this off pod. We definitely think that this is the 3rd year in a row that a transfer wide receiver leads the team in receiving. I think we're speeding towards that with Billy Kemp this year. I think he's going to have a good year.
Yeah, his stock has been ascending really since almost before spring ball started, and then once more practices in the spring kept coming, and then culminating in the spring game where you had those 2 catches for 15, 24 yards, and I think the 2-point conversion pass. And after the spring game, the Sims quote on Kemp was, he was talking about him. He said, basically, my mindset is Billy Kemp, he's open, throwing the ball.
Right.
Pretty simple. Pretty simple strategy there is to get maybe your most dynamic receiver the ball as much as possible. He also talked about the fact that they had a little bit of a connection because obviously Sims with Georgia Tech, Kemp obviously at Virginia. You don't think about that as much. No. They already had that connection.
Yeah, that's definitely, it's unique that they could build that really quickly. But it's also kind of a unique situation the way that Jeff Sims is kind of taking hold of this football team, right? Going back to what we kind of started talking about with him coming out as a surprise. Like even him doing that today was another show of his leadership, right? To come out today knowing that so much was being talked about the wide receiver room, and disarray is not the right, it's too strong. Influx maybe is the way I would go after what happened with Xavier Betts over the weekend. And I think that it was very purposeful for Jeff Sims to come out and talk today as the quarterback and the leader of this program. And I thought it was good on him, and another points for his leadership.
Yeah, and that was the big takeaway, or that was the big storyline I think about Sims going into Big Ten Media Days, was how has he grown as a leader, in what ways. Not just has he grown as a leader, but how has he done that?
Yeah.
And then
can we see it?
At Media Days, he talked about memorizing all the names of everyone on the roster, which maybe you didn't get all 120 or 125,
right.
But that's a pretty tall task. But I think he got at least most of them, the vast majority of names down.
Enough to where they noticed it and they like it, right?
Yeah. His Sims strategy, that was funny, just a tangent, was he would go home, look at the roster on his phone, memorize the names. He would come here to the locker room where they had the names and their pictures next to him, so he would stand in front of the locker and memorize it. And I thought that was funny because what I do, I'm pretty good with names. Everyone always says they're bad with names. I feel like I'm pretty good, and my strategy is, all right, try to write down the names, so then boom, it's in your head. And that's my strategy.
Maybe I'll switch my strategy because it sucks.
Well, hey, either my strategy or Sims. Maybe you'll start to get on that. But you mentioned the receivers and Garret McGuire. Obviously, he came out and talked today as well. He mentioned a bunch of the young receivers who are kind of catching on early. He mentioned 5 when we said Malachi Coleman, Jalen Lloyd, Jaden Doss, Bryce Turner, and Jeremiah Charles are the ones who early on are having a really, really good camp.
Yeah, and those guys, I think to a man, all of the receivers that also came out today, and Garrett, the position coach, said this today, that those guys have gotten better as camp has gone along, right? If you remember, in kind of a unique situation for today's college football, none of those wide receivers early enrolled, right? And so they all got here in the summer into a situation where one of them at least is going to be needed out there on the field this year. So we have to see which one or two, if the team is in a good good spot. But they were not here for the spring and the winter to kind of learn the playbook and get acclimated right away. And so having to do that right now in the summer, it makes sense that those first couple of weeks may have been a little rougher, and then now the light's starting to come on a little bit, which is a really good sign for those guys.
Yeah, and one more thing before we get out of here is on last Tuesday, Matt Rule talked about the receivers. They were going to be a question mark, and he said coming in, that was the position where we had the most questions.
Right.
And that was right after he talked about Marcus Washington suffering a knee injury. He had just gotten back to fall camp, getting the cast removed.
It's tough. On his birthday, right?
Yeah, on his birthday too. And same birthday as Trev Alberts, evidently. And Jansen.
Come on, you just not shout him out.
I've shouted him out all 3 times, our last 3 episodes, so I was like, am I going to do it?
I mean, next time we won't. Don't blow his head up.
Yeah, that's the gift. But he talked about the room on Tuesday, and that in that presser also mentioned Xavier Betts being out, Malachi Coleman being out, and then Saturday, this past Saturday, he talked about the same things. He talked about Xavier Betts' departure from the program, but talked about the receivers being that big question area, and talked again about the receivers, those young guys. The freshmen are going to need to play. That's what he said. They're going to have to step up, the young guys and the freshmen. So I don't know if you have any other final point, but I wanted to throw a question at you randomly.
Okay.
Out of that group, that 5-person group that McGuire talked about today, who's your one guy that you're sort of looking at to maybe get on the field early and make an impact for this team in his first year?
Jaden Doss would probably be. Yeah, you know me, so you know Jaden Doss is going to be the one I picked. I was high on him coming out of high school, went and saw him play in person. I think that he's a really good talent. I think that he just needs to, as all of these kids need to do, is to get acclimated to not just the playbook, but also college life, right? Garret McGuire actually spoke about him today, about how, there's times where he looks like it's all clicking and it's going very fast. And then he asked him, hey, did you run that concept in high school? Yes, coach. Okay, that's why. So but if you struggle with the terminology, just think when we call it this, it was called that. So that way in your brain it's happening quickly. And I think it'll come together for him. That would be the one that I would pick.
Yeah, Dawson's stock has been going up. Hasn't it been like a crescendo throughout the time he's been on campus?
Right.
And I think, you're our senior recruiting analyst, and I think you have a really good perspective and background on him. And Jay Foreman, and Steve Marek, who do our Black Shirt Breakdown series. Encourage you guys to go check that out on our YouTube channel. Again, it's Black Shirt Breakdown, Jaden Doss edition. Because I think those guys, when I watched that, it was like, okay, it gives you a couple little nuggets here.
And there's different ways that he can be involved in the offense. I don't know about special teams yet, but I can see that just because there's a couple of guys like Billy Kemp that I think will be involved in that. But yeah, I think he has a real good chance to pop this year.
Yep. So again, you guys can check out that Black Shirt Breakdown on the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel. Encourage you guys to like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and get these videos dropped directly into your feed. Right. We'll also have post-practice coverage today, tomorrow, the rest of the week, the rest of eternity.
Open practice tomorrow.
And open practice tomorrow for about 20, 25-ish minutes tomorrow morning for the 14th practice of Husker Fall Camp. So keep it locked on here and on InsideNebraska.com for all of our written and digital content. So for Greg Smith, I'm Zack Carpenter, and we'll catch you guys again next time.